She was standing by the mailboxes again, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled to the elbows like she'd been fixing something herself. Mrs. Haldon. Everyone in the building called her that, even though she'd told me once I could just say, Claire. I never did. Somehow, Mrs. Haldon kept things where they belonged. It was Saturday morning. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and burnt toast. I was carrying a grocery bag that only had coffee and bread inside. It made me look like I was trying. Morning, I said. She looked up, blinked once like she was surfacing from a thought. Morning, Evan. Early slope, she nodded, slow. That's a habit you don't want to keep. There was a softness in her voice that wasn't quite concern, more like recognition. She had that tone a lot. Like she'd lived long enough to know how small habits become whole lives. I shifted the bag in my hand. She was holding her phone but not looking at it. The light from the stairwell hit the gold band she still wore, though it had slipped around to the underside of her finger. You still teaching nights? I asked, just to fill the air. For now, she smiled faintly. It's something to do between missing things. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. She closed her mailbox, the sound sharp in the quiet hall. I noticed she never rushed. Even the way she turned the key looked careful, practiced. When she walked past me toward her apartment, the scent of her shampoo, something clean, like cedar, stayed for a second too long. She turned once before closing the door. You should come by for coffee sometime. I always make too much. I said I would. I sat on my couch with the TV on mute and scrolled through my phone. A dozen half-written messages sat in drafts. Some started with, "Hey," others with nothing. I didn't send any. From my window I could see the faint glow of her living room lamp. Sometimes she sat by it with a book, sometimes she wasn't there at all. That night, she was, cross-legged on the couch, reading, a mug balanced on her knee. I watched long enough to feel embarrassed and turned the blinds half shut. I told myself it was just neighborly curiosity. That lie didn't last long. The next morning I found her in the shared laundry room. She was folding towels, small deliberate movements. Her hair was loose this time, a few strands caught in the static. "You're up early again," she said. "So are you." "I'm always up early." She looked at the dryers spinning behind me. "Noise helps." I didn't ask what from. She didn't say. We stood there for a while, the hum of the machines filling everything we didn't. She handed me the fabric softener without asking, like she'd been watching me figure it out. "You live alone, right?" she said finally. "Yeah. Don't forget to buy salt. You'll miss it more than you think." I laughed. "That sounds like experience." Her eyes softened. "That sounds like marriage." She folded the last towel, stacked it neatly. I noticed she pressed the corners straight, like control was its own comfort. When she turned to leave, I said something before I could stop myself. "You ever get tired of the quiet?" She paused in the doorway. "All the time." Then, after a beat, "But I promised myself better." I tried to sound lighter than I felt. "And here I am." She looked at me for a second, longer than polite, shorter than brave, and then left, the door swinging closed behind her. The dryers kept spinning, the hum steady, like the world had decided not to notice what just started. A few days passed before I saw her again. Late afternoon. The kind of light that turns everything the color of memory. I was coming up the stairs with a toolbox. She was kneeling outside her door, a screwdriver in her hand, the door hinge half detached. "Looks like you've got that handled," I said. She smiled without looking up. "Don't sound so surprised." I wasn't. Liar. Her laugh was quick, not practiced. I knelt beside her, the scent of metal and lemon cleaner between us. "Let me help." She hesitated, only for a second, then handed me the screwdriver. Her fingers brushed mine. It wasn't deliberate, but it wasn't nothing. When the door finally shut without squeaking, she said, "It's the least I can offer." Her apartment felt warmer than mine. Books stacked along the wall, soft jazz playing low enough to almost not exist. A photo frame face down on the shelf, not turned over recently, just settled that way. She poured tea into mismatched cups. "It's mint," she said. "Helps with nerves." I nodded, though she hadn't asked. She sat across from me, pulling her sleeves down to her wrists. You remind me of my son's friend, she said quietly. He used to come by after school and fix things for us. The faucet, the back door. Her voice drifted off. He stopped coming after the funeral. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, just honest. I didn't know you had a son, I said. Had. She corrected gently. He's in Toronto now. Lives with his father. There it was, the risk, sitting right between us on the table. Her story wasn't a secret, but it carried weight. Divorce, distance, the kind of independence that isn't chosen so much as accepted. I looked down at my cup. You ever think about starting over? She smiled, small and tired. Everyone thinks about it. Some of us just stop pretending we will. I wanted to tell her she still could. That she was the most alive thing in this quiet building, but I didn't. Instead I said, you fixed the hinge, that's a start. She laughed again, but it faded quickly. Careful, Evan, you'll talk me to believing in things again. Da ja da ja tsa. We sat in silence for a long while. I traced the rim of the cup with my finger. She folded a napkin slowly, creasing it into perfect halves. Outside, rain started, gentle at first, then steady. She looked toward the window. I used to love rain. Then one day I just didn't. Why? Because it kept reminding me who wasn't coming home. Something in me ached, not sympathy, something closer to recognition. That same loneliness that hums beneath small talk and shared tea. When I stood to leave, she touched my arm. Barely. Thank you, she said. For what? For pretending this was just tea. Her fingers slipped away, and I didn't move for a moment. Later, lying awake, I kept replaying that touch. How simple it was, how much it ruined the quiet after. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Everything smelled damp. The hallway, the carpet, even the letters in my mailbox. I hadn't meant to see her again so soon. But life has a way of looping you back where you shouldn't linger. Her door was open when I walked past. A faint hum of music, the kind that sounds like it's been playing for hours. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by old papers. Bills, I guessed. Or maybe memories. She looked up when I hesitated. You can come in, she said. I didn't. She was sorting through God's lips pressed together, the kind of concentration people use to avoid feeling something. I found letters from before. She stopped. Before everything went sideways. Her voice caught, almost imperceptibly. I sat beside her, close enough to smell the faint citrus in her hair. You don't have to, I know, she said, but I do it anyway. We didn't speak for a while. The rain filled in our silence. She handed me a faded photo without looking. A man, her ex, maybe. Smiling too wide. Do you ever think about him? I asked. Sometimes, she said, then added softly, less than I think about who I used to be. That line stuck. The way she said used to be, like the past was a person she'd misplaced. She reached for another letter and her hand brushed mine, a light, accidental graze. Neither of us pulled away immediately. Then she did, quickly as if burned. I should stop making a habit of this, she said.
Letting people stay.
Startled both of us. It was her friend, the woman from 3B, gray hair. Cheerful in the way people get when they sense something private happening. Oh, Evan, right? I stood up too fast. Yeah, just helping, Claire. She said quickly, her voice even. He's fixing my lamp. The lie sat between us, small but sharp. Her friend smiled politely, looked from me to her, then nodded. All right, then. I'll see you at yoga tomorrow. When the door shut, the silence came back heavier. I tried to hand her the photo again, but she wasn't looking. She was staring at the window, the rain streaking down the glass. You don't have to explain, I said. I wasn't going to. Her tone wasn't cold, just tired. I took a breath, trying to lighten the air. The lamp actually does work, you know. That earned the smallest smile. Good. I'd ache sigalai to be way for a second. I thought she might laugh. But she didn't. She just looked at me. Really looked. Like she was trying to remember if this was still harmless. I felt the space between us tilt. One half step closer, and it would be something else entirely. Her hand moved, maybe to fix her sleeve, maybe toward me. Then she stopped herself. "Good night, Evan," she said quietly. It was the way she said it, carefully, that undid me. I wanted to say don't, but the word never left my mouth. Instead, I nodded. "Good night." A night I dreamt of rain at half-finished sentences, and when I woke, I could still feel the warmth of her almost touch lingering on my wrist. It was one of those evenings that felt borrowed. Too warm for the season, the air carrying that faint metallic scent before rain. I found her sitting on the low bench near the parking lot, a paper cup in her hands, steam curling upward into the dusk. "Didn't expect to see you out here," I said. "I didn't, either," she replied, her voice soft, like she'd been arguing with herself before I arrived. I sat beside her. The wood was cold, damp through my jeans. She didn't move away. We talked about nothing first. The neighbor's dog that barked at shadows, the broken elevator, the grocery store's bad lighting. Ordinary things that pretended to hold the world together. Then she said, without looking at me, "You didn't come by last week." I hesitated. "Did you notice?" She smiled, faintly. "I notice everything I shouldn't." Something in my chest shifted. The quiet kinda ache that doesn't belong to excitement or pain, but both. "I thought maybe you were busy," she said, still staring ahead. "I was trying not to think about coming here." That made her turn. The look in her eyes wasn't surprise, it was recognition, like she'd already had that saying self out naja dado outsavao arasao au joa au car past, headlights sweeping over us. For a moment we were both silhouettes, strangers who happened to share a bench. She exhaled long and slow. "You remind me of when things still felt new, before every choice came with an apology." "Is that bad?" "No," she said. "It's just dangerous." She took a sip of her coffee, but her hand trembled slightly. "You ever get tired of pretending something isn't happening?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her lips parted, then closed again.
"Don't do that."
"Make me say what we both already know." The words hung there. Frau faun She set her cup down, stared at the steam fading into the dark. "I shouldn't even be sitting here. She stopped, searching. "You're young. You'll find someone who doesn't have to think twice." "I'm not looking for someone else," I said quietly. She laughed once. Not unkindly, just broken around the edges. "You say that now. Give it time." "I don't want time." Her eyes lifted to mine, slowly, searching for something I wasn't sure I had the right to offer. The wind shifted, her hair brushed my shoulder. She didn't move away. Neither did I, for a second. No cars, no voices, just the small sound of her breath catching. "I keep telling myself I'm past all this," she whispered. "That wanting doesn't belong to me anymore." I swallowed. "Maybe it still does." She looked down, smiled faintly, but it wasn't a happy smile. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I might believe you." The silence that followed was too full to survive. I wanted to reach for her, not to claim, just to steady, but I didn't. Her eyes flicked to my hand, then back to the night sky. "Evan," she said softly, like she was about to end something before it began. But she didn't. And the question she didn't ask hung there, suspended between us, trembling, waiting. "What are we doing?" She stopped answering the door. At first, I told myself she was just busy, classes, errands, the small rhythms of a life that didn't need company. But by the third day, the silence felt deliberate. Her blinds were drawn, lights low. I could still hear the faint sound of her record player sometimes, that same jazz piece looping. But she didn't open the door, not even when I knocked softly and said her name. I saw her a week later in the parking lot. She was loading groceries into her car, sunglasses on though the sky was overcast. When she noticed me, she hesitated, a flicker of surprise or guilt or both. "Hey," I said. "Hi." Her voice was polite. "Careful. You disappeared." "I needed space," she said simply. "You didn't do anything wrong." That last line was the one that stung. The kind people say when they've already decided distance is safer. I nodded, pretending I understood. "Space is good," she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I thought so, too. She reached into her bag for her keys. That's when I noticed a small photo clipped inside, her son, maybe, standing next to a man who looked vaguely familiar. Your husband, I asked before thinking. She froze. Then ex-husband. A pause. He was here last week. We had to talk about our son. Her voice faltered on that last word, as if it still cost something to say it out loud. Oh. I tried to sound casual. He's okay. He's struggling, she said. Grades, adjustment, it's complicated. She looked up at me finally. Everything is complicated. I wanted to reach out, not seek help of yourself. Take care of yourself, Evan. Not so thanks for asking, just take care. Out. Days passed. The hallway felt emptier, though nothing had changed. I still passed her door on my way out, still half expected her to open it. I started walking in the evenings, long, pointless loops around the block. The air was colder now. I'd catch myself thinking about her every few minutes, then pretending I wasn't. Once, I thought I saw her at the cafe near the station, sitting by the window with her head down. But when I went inside, it wasn't her. Just someone with the same posture, the same quiet way of existing. That night, I typed a message I didn't send. You don't have to explain. I just miss the sound of your voice when you're pretending you don't care. I stared at it for a long time and deleted it. Blinds were open again. Her window cracked slightly, letting the curtains breathe. A small thing, but it felt like proof of life. Still, I didn't knock, I just stood there, holding a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold without me noticing. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was late when she finally knocked on my door. The sound was soft, hesitant, like she hoped I wouldn't answer and also that I would. When I opened it, she stood there holding a dish towel, of all things, like she'd come straight from her kitchen, before she could talk herself out of it. Her hair was slightly damp, loose around her shoulders. I burned dinner, she said, half a laugh caught in her throat. I stepped aside. That sounds like a good enough reason to come over. She didn't move at first. Then we sat at my small table. The kind that made everything feel temporary. She looked around, noticing the neatness that came from having no one to mess things up. Your place always feels so undecided, she said. I never stay long enough anywhere to make lived in. She smiled faintly. You will. We both knew she wasn't talking about apartments. The silence settled differently this time, not empty, but expectant. I poured her a glass of water. She held it without drinking. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For what? For vanishing. For pretending you didn't matter. My throat tightened before I could say anything. She continued, eyes on her glass. My ex. He came by, and I realized how easy it is for people to leave when things get real. I didn't want you to be another version of that story. I wouldn't have been. I said, too quickly. She looked up, not doubting me, just measuring how much I believed it. Maybe not, she said. But I didn't want to find out the hard way. Now we sat there, dawn of the fridge filled the pauses. I kept thinking, I said finally. How strange it is to miss someone who lives one wall away. That made her lie softly, though her eyes stayed wet. That's exactly how it starts, isn't it? You think it's nothing. Then you start listening for footsteps in the hall. I nodded. I stopped knocking because I was afraid of what you'd say. And I stopped answering. There was no music, no thunderclap, just the small sound of her setting the glass down. She reached across the table. Not for my hand, just close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin. I don't know what this is, she whispered. But it's the first thing that's made me feel awake in a long time. I swallowed. Then let it be that, nothing else. Her shoulders relaxed. She exhaled. The kind of breath people take when they stop holding back. We sat like that for a while, not touching, not avoiding it either. When she finally stood, she looked lighter, as if naming the thing had somehow lessened its weight. At the door she turned, a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. You're a good neighbor, Evan. Trying to be, she nodded. Okay. That was it, no confession, no kiss, just that one word. But it felt like the most honest ending we could manage. Spring came quietly that year. The kind of slow warmth that doesn't announce itself. It just seeps in, morning by morning, until you realize the air has changed. By then, things between us had settled into something unspoken but steady. Not romantic, not exactly platonic, just real. She still left her window cracked open. I still made too much coffee. Most mornings around 8:47 we'd cross paths in the hallway, her leaving for work, me coming back from a run. A small nod, sometimes a smile, nothing that would draw attention, but everything One Sunday, I found her sitting on the same bench near the parking lot. The wood had splintered a little since that night, but she looked content, watching the world pass without needing to explain herself to it. I brought 2 cups, 1 tea, 1 black coffee. She took the tea without asking which was which. You remembered, she said. Some things are hard to forget. We sat there quiet, just like before. The difference was that the quiet didn't H anymore. I started sleeping better, she said after a while. Stop waiting for someone to come home. I smiled. Progress. She nudged my knee with hers, gentle. You helped with that. I shrugged. I just listened. That's more than most people do. The wind carried the faint smell of cut grass and rain. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The same small motion I'd watched her make 100 times. It still hit me in the same way, just softer now. Later, when she stood to leave, she looked down at me and said, You know, I kept my promise. What promise? The one about wanting better. She smiled. I just didn't know it would look like this. I didn't ask what this meant, I didn't need to. She reached out, brushed my sleeve, light as a habit. You're coming by later. Only if you burn dinner again. Her laugh, still quiet, so warm, followed her all the way to the stairs. I passed her apartment. The door was slightly open, the sound of jazz playing low, familiar. I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember the stillness before it became memory. I stepped inside. She was setting the table, 2 cups already waiting, mint tea and black coffee. You're late, she said. You started without me. Someone had to. We smiled. That quiet, knowing kind of smile that doesn't need a reason. Our hands brushed, not accidentally this time. And for once, neither of us looked away. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't forever. It was enough.